Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Drug Regulatory Authority has approved the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use. This comes as the country recorded another 45 deaths from COVID-19 overnight, raising the toll to 10,908. Globally, the virus has so far claimed over 2 million lives and infected more than 93.7 million people. A WhatsApp chat of Indian TV host Arnab Goswami shows he had prior information about the 2019 Pulwama attack and the Balakot airstrike. In the leaked conversation, Goswami rejoiced the Pulwama attack, which had killed 40 Indian soldiers. This has validated Pakistan's stance that Indian intelligence agencies staged the attacks to help Narendra Modi sweep the 2019 general elections. The Taliban have welcomed the U.S. announcement of troops withdrawal from Afghanistan. Taliban spokesperson Dr. Mohammad Naeem said the move is a practical step under the Doha Accord. Meanwhile, the Afghan government says 13 policemen were killed in a Taliban attack in the Herat province. The group has yet to comment on the claim. In Uganda, election officials have declared incumbent Yoweri Museveni the winner of the presidential election with 59% of the vote. But his rival Bobi Wine has alleged widespread fraud and urged the citizens to reject the result. Wine also accused that hundreds of security personnel have surrounded his house. And in Pakistan, a team of 10 Nepali mountaineers have made history by summiting K2 for the first time in winter. The 8,611-meter high K2 was the only peak that had never been conquered in winter before. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Drug Regulatory Authority has approved the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use. This is the first coronavirus vaccine to get the green light for use in Pakistan. Health officials say the country will also procure over 1 million doses of the vaccine made by China's Sinopharm. The country aims to launch a nationwide immunization drive by the second quarter of this year. Meanwhile, Pakistan recorded another 45 deaths from COVID-19 overnight, raising the toll to 10,908. The number of cases has risen to over 516,000. In France, the death toll from the coronavirus has surpassed 70,000, while the infections have surged to 2.93 million. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2 million lives and infected over 93.7 million people so far. More in this report.
The world has hit the grim milestone of 2 million COVID-19 deaths, with the US, Brazil, India, Mexico and the UK contributing almost 50% of the fatalities. Brazil's Amazon region is racing to save dozens of premature babies after the latest spike caused catastrophic breakdown in oxygen supply to hospitals. Brazil's president said a plane will be sent to India to pick up COVID-19 vaccines in 2 or 3 days at the most. The U.S. death tally is nearing 392,000, while over 23.5 million people have tested positive so far. Meanwhile, inoculation drive in the U.S. continues, hitting snags as vaccine shortages prompted large healthcare systems to cancel hundreds of vaccination appointments. Several U.S. states have accused federal government of deception for pledging to distribute millions of vaccine from a stockpile that officials say does not even exist.
The Trump administration said they were going to expedite the second dosage, if you remember. And rather than holding back the second dose, supply, they would send the second dose, and that would increase a state's supply. It turns out that that was not true. They had already sent out everything they had. So there was no increase in supply.
Meanwhile, Iceland has genetically sequenced all its positive COVID-19 cases since the coronavirus pandemic began, as World Health Organization has called increase in efforts to study viruses sequencing and worldwide acceleration in vaccine rollouts. The UK has tightened its border controls to block new variants of COVID-19, suspending all travel corridor arrangements.
We must take additional steps now to stop those strains from entering the country. So yesterday we announced that we're banning flights from South America and Portugal, and to protect us against the risk of as yet unidentified new strains, we will also temporarily close all travel corridors from 0400 hours on Monday.
Australia's opposition has accused government of abandoning 40,000 Australians stranded overseas after Emirates Airline abruptly suspended flights. While South Korea has extended its current social distancing rules for 2 more weeks, 2 of the largest bases of U.S. forces in Korea have also imposed a shelter-in-place order after the cluster of infections. Meanwhile, India's inoculation drive is set to begin today to vaccinate over 30 million of its frontline workers.
A WhatsApp chat of Indian TV host Arnab Goswami shows he had prior information about the 2019 Pulwama attack and the Balakot airstrike. More in this report.
In the leaked conversation with broadcaster Partho Dasgupta, Arnab Goswami rejoiced the Pulwama attack, which had killed 40 Indian soldiers. Goswami wrote to Dasgupta acknowledging how the attack had helped his channel. In a message dated February the 23rd, Goswami told him that something major will be done against Pakistan. This was 3 days before Indian jets trespassed into Pakistani territory and dropped their payload in Balakot. Pakistan's response the very next day led to the downing of 2 Indian jets and the capture of an Indian Air Force pilot. This revelation has reinstated Pakistan's stance that Indian intelligence agencies staged the attacks to help Narendra Modi sweep the 2019 general elections. The revelations have drawn fierce online criticism from Indians. They are calling out the government for endangering their national security.
And to talk more about these shocking revelations, we are joined by Pakistan's National Security Advisor, Dr. Moeed Yusuf. Dr. Yusuf, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. The leaked WhatsApp chat of Arnab Goswami is yet another validation of Pakistan's stance that India uses such attacks to malign Pakistan. Being the National Security Advisor, what do you have to say about this?
Frankly, what I have to say is we should stop getting all surprised about these kind of revelations. We've talked about this again and again as the state of Pakistan. Even at the time of Pulwama, we've come out clearly and said it was false flag. The world did not believe it. We've explained what India is doing to undermine Pakistan through a dossier. The EU Disinfo Lab information's come out. Very recently, we raised this concern about a false flag. We've talked about military misadventure by India. All of this we've known, we've put out, we've been communicating. But there's no surprise here. I mean, I'd be shocked if it was anything different. The Pulwama attack was staged. The Balakot strikes were done for domestic political reasons for the Modi government to win again. They had a pilot down in Pakistani territory. We returned the pilot. They shifted and concocted a narrative which said India won the crisis and won an election based on that. This is a completely dishonest, mafia-like regime, and that's who they are.
So, Dr. Yusuf, how Pakistan's government plans to take up this particular issue?
Not this specific issue. Look, I mean, since 5th August 2019, India has crossed the international legal red line. India has crossed the diplomatic red line. And frankly, India has crossed the red line of being a responsible state. So all of this, there are multiple avenues that we are pursuing. None of this can happen overnight. None of this can, a lot of it cannot come in public eye, but we will pursue every single channel we have available to us.
So, Dr. Yusuf, how do you expect the international community to react on this?
Well, I hope they react with some justice, with some, logic, and frankly, with some self-respect. I mean, so far what we've seen is countries turning a blind eye, institutions turning a blind eye, and then when things go wrong, there's a crisis in South Asia, they come running to avoid a war. That's no way to do diplomacy. They've got to prevent things from happening, and the way to do that is to call India out on its rogue behavior and resolve the world's longest-standing dispute in Kashmir.
Dr. Mueed Yusuf, Pakistan's National Security Advisor, thank you for talking to Indus News. Now we have with us Mr. Ravi Srivastav, an analyst from India. Sir, thank you very much for your time, for being with us. How can mere a TV anchor have access to such sensitive information of national security, and especially when we talk beforehand?
Absolutely, you are correct. This channel was launched sometimes in May 2017, and it has been having a phenomenal success in India. They were having channel in English and a Hindi version as well, named Republic Bharat. Recently, there was a scam detected in which it was found that the main anchor and a CEO of the company, Mr. Arnab Goswami, has done a lot of mischief to gain the TRP. This particular channel and its sister channel, both are totally right-winger channels, and they are pursuing the agenda of the government of India, which is again a right-wing party led at the moment. So they are getting all the information from the government, and they have been making a lot of stories on the channel. Less news and more of the opinions they were doing. And recently it was found, and Mr. Arnab Goswami was arrested in the month of November, and he was in jail for nearly 7 or 8 days. And now the Mumbai police has filed an FIR and has now made a charge sheet also with some 3,400 pages, out of which 500 pages of this chat, which you are showing on the right side of the screen, has been submitted, which has got all details of his talking to the top people in the government of India, like the Prime Minister, Information Broadcasting Minister, Mr. Prakash Javadekar, talking about Mr. Arun Jaitley, and he has been using all kind of connections or illicit kind of contacts in the government of India. He has been, it is mentioned in the chat that he said that he'll be talking to the Prime Minister in due course of time. He has been saying that the Pulwama attack, he was almost celebrating that Pulwama attack, and he says that he had some prior information was available to him, something like that. He said that Mr. Arun Jaitley, the then Finance Minister of India, had screwed the Indian economy. He has made these such kind of remarks in this WhatsApp chat.
Mr. Srivastav, there has been a huge online backlash by the Indian public on these revelations. So don't you think Narendra Modi's government has lost its credibility completely in the eyes of Indian public now?
In India, there are 90% of the TV channels are pursuing the government agenda only. That's a very unfortunate thing. There is hardly any independent reporting. There is hardly any independent media. And these people, some channels are so determined that, they get the first-hand information of any attack on the opposition leader, any enforcement directorate raids, any other penal action against the opposition people. They get a first-hand information, and they make a breaking news on the TV channel, and they show it to the nation. So such people are, there is hardly any independent media who is showing the objective reporting, fair reporting, unbiased kind of a thing. All their debates are nearly one-sided. So now this particular chat is really going to open a Pandora box. And I wish that some channels must come forward and show all these chats and its contents to the public of India in absolute detail. But I'm yet to find any Indian channel showing all these chats on the media at the moment.
Mr. Ravi Srivastav, Indian analyst, joining us from Mumbai. Thank you for your time at Indus News. Now we are joined by Major General Ijaz Awan, retired defense analyst from Islamabad. Thank you for your time, General Ijaz. The leaked chat of Arnab Goswami has once again exposed India's nefarious designs against Pakistan. How alarming do you think such revelations are?
I think very alarming on three counts. One, that their design against Pakistan is one thing that has been disclosed here, revealed here, and again in the European Union Disinfo Lab, and it has also come into discussion in the British Parliament. There is no doubt what India is doing. But more alarming is that elected president in office, elected prime minister, Indian prime minister in office, and national security advisors can take the lives of their own people in uniform to draw the political mileage. Now, it is very clear that Pulwama was planned. It was a false flag operation where they took the lives of their own 40 men in uniform. Now, this is something very alarming when their own armed forces are not safe in the hands of national security advisor and their prime ministers. Then one can imagine how the soldiers must be feeling in their country and how they must be worried about their own future. This is one. Second, based on this false flag operation, they did draw a political mileage, one, all right, but then they staged and they attacked Pakistan with the airstrike, which amounted to playing with fire, and our response did show that things could have escalated if we had reacted irresponsibly. So our response was befitting but yet calculated. And third thing, that they disregard the international convention, and they can, for drawing political mileage, they can go to any extent. So these three counts are very alarming. They can put the regional peace at risk, whether it is India against Pakistan or India against China. So with such a mindset, I think the international community must take a note of this thing, how politically ambitious the Prime Minister of India is and how vicious the National Security Advisor is.
So, General Ijaz, the false flag operations which you just mentioned, this is what Pakistani authorities have continuously been raising alarm about. Don't you think it's the high time for the international community to hold India accountable for its nefarious designs, which are a threat to not only regional stability but also the global security?
Well, I think the way response has started coming in the British Parliament and the European Union Disinfo Lab, and the way we have shared the information or intelligence-based realities with the United Nations through a dossier, and the way we have shared the confessions of Kulbhushan Yadav, who was a state-sponsored terrorist, a raw operative who was caught in Pakistan. I think with this, the Indian designs are very clear to the international community. But now we have to see whether the new government, the President-elect Joe Biden, when he assumes office, he takes charge of the situation, will he like to look the other way or like to hold India accountable for human rights violation? Because human rights violation concern has been expressed by President Joe Biden a number of times during his electoral campaign. So I think Pakistan and China would be only able to strategize their next plan after seeing the response of President Joe Biden and their position of India and how much they hold India accountable when President Joe Biden expresses the South Asian policy.
Major General Ijaz Awan, retired defense analyst, joining from Islamabad. Thank you for your time at Indus News. We really appreciate that. Now, moving on, Kashmiri activist Mashal Hussain Malik has called on the international community to hold New Delhi responsible for violating the Geneva Conventions. In a video message, Malik said Indian forces have filed fabricated cases against her husband, who is a peaceful political leader. She said Indian occupation forces are physically and mentally torturing Yasin Malik in the Tihar death cell. Mishal said Yasin Malik is not being provided proper health care, while his health in the death cell is deteriorating continuously. She called on the world to declare Yasin Malik a prisoner of conscience and a protected personality, because if India eliminates the Kashmiri leadership, peace in South Asia, which is the deadliest nuclear flashpoint, will never be achieved.
I appeal to the world to please save my husband, Mohammad Yasin Malik, who is the peaceful political leader of this entire freedom struggle against Indian occupation. And right now, to break his resolve, they have locked him up in Tihar death cell, and they have filed fake, fabricated cases against him to charge him without any crime that he's committed. And right now, in this death cell, he's being physically and mentally tortured without any medical care, and his health is very fragile.
In India, a leader of protesting farmers has rejected National Investigation Agency's summon to appear before it on January 17. Baldev Singh Sirsa said the government is using Supreme Court and the National Investigation Agency to sabotage the farmers' agitation. The union president also accused the centre of trying to derail the farmers' protest. It comes a day after the 9th round of talks between farmers and the government ended without making any breakthrough. But the two sides agreed to meet again next week. Since November, tens of thousands of farmers have been camping at the Delhi borders, demanding the government roll back the farm laws. Nearly 80 farmers have died during the protest. The United States has told India that it is unlikely to get a waiver on its planned acquisition of Russian S-400 air defense systems. The warning significantly raises the risk of similar sanctions on India as the US imposed on Turkey for buying the same defense system from Russia. Diplomatic sources say the Trump administration has told India to scrap the $5 billion deal and avoid a diplomatic crisis with Washington. It maintains that New Delhi did not have a wide waiver from a 2017 US law aimed at deterring countries from buying Russian military hardware. Experts say the position of the US is unlikely to change in near future, as Biden has promised a tougher approach towards Russia. The Taliban have welcomed the US announcement of troops withdrawal from Afghanistan. Taliban spokesperson Dr. Mohammad Naeem said the move is a practical step under the Doha Accord. He said the Taliban are committed to their commitments in the agreement and demand the same from the other side. Meanwhile, the Afghan government says the 13 policemen were killed in a Taliban attack in Herat province. Police said the attackers took the weapons of the security officials with them following the attack. The Taliban have yet to comment on the government's claim. Meanwhile, 3 policemen have been killed and 3 others wounded in 2 explosions in Kabul and Baghlan provinces. An explosion also occurred near an Afghan forces facility in the Kandahar province. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Hong Kong government has called the latest sanctions imposed by the US against 6 officials insane, shameless and despicable. The government calls the report biased, politically motivated and not reflecting the truth. The government added that it fully supports Beijing in adopting appropriate countermeasures in response to the sanctions. The US earlier announced sanctions on 6 Hong Kong officials over mass arrests of pro-democracy activists in the city. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump has also directed its administration to minimize procurement of Chinese goods and services. Trump's national security advisor Robert O'Brien said the sanctions on procurement will reduce the risks from espionage. NATO says it is open for transparency and a risk reduction dialogue with Russia over its withdrawal from Open Skies Treaty. NATO's deputy spokesperson Piers Gazelet said the organization's allies are consulting closely on the future of arms control. He said Russia's selective implementation of its obligations under the treaty has undermined the security and stability in the Euro-Atlantic region. Meanwhile, the UK and France have also urged Russia to reconsider its decision to pull out from the Treaty on Open Skies. Yesterday, Russia announced its exit from the treaty, while the US has already withdrawn from the pact in November last year. In Uganda, election officials have declared incumbent Yoweri Museveni the winner of the presidential election. Museveni won 59% of the vote, while opposition candidate Bobi Wine earned 35%. Wine has alleged widespread fraud and urged citizens to reject the result. He also accused that hundreds of security personnel have surrounded his house. Dozens of people have already been killed during violence in the run-up to the election. Pakistan's Chief of Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal Mujahid Anwar Khan, has called for bolstering cooperation with Turkey's defense industries. The Air Chief said this during a meeting with the head of the Presidency for Turkish Defense Industries, Dr. Ismail Demir. He hailed the Turkish defense production sector and commended its progress over the last few years. Later, the Air Chief visited Turkish aerospace industries and other defense sector companies. The Chief of Air Staff is on a 4-day official visit to Turkey. The U.S. Defense Department has announced to include Israel in the area covered by its Middle East-focused Central Command. It said Abraham Accords have provided strategic opportunity for the U.S. to align key partners against shared threats in the Middle East. In a statement, the department said the move will open up additional opportunities for Tel Aviv's cooperation with the CENTCOM partners. It said Washington structured boundaries to best mitigate the risk and protect U.S. interests and partners. The department said the strong cooperation between Israel and Washington's European allies under Eurocommand will also be maintained. Centrist Armin Laschet has been elected the new leader of Germany's Christian Democrats. Out of 1,001 delegates, 992 voted to elect the new CDU leader in an online congress. Arch-conservative Friedrich Merz emerged as the main competitor to Laschet amid the vote. The third candidate, foreign policy expert Norbert Röttgen, was eliminated with 224 votes. Laschet will now head Europe's biggest economy into its future. He will succeed Angela Merkel as Chancellor when she steps down after federal elections in September. Merkel pledged not to run again after becoming Europe's predominant leader since taking office in 2005. US President Donald Trump has received Morocco's highest award for his work in advancing the country's normalization deal with Israel. White House senior advisor Jared Kushner and Middle East envoy Avi Berkowitz received other awards for their work on the deal. The award was given to Trump by Morocco's ambassador to the United States, Princess Lala Jamoula Alaoui, in a private ceremony. It was a gift from Morocco's King Mohammed, and it is awarded only to the heads of the state. Washington is in the last 5 months helped broker deals between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan and Morocco. The agreements are aimed at normalizing relations and opening economic ties. In the United States, officials are implementing unprecedented security measures ahead of President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration. This comes amid warnings of possible armed demonstrations by President Donald Trump's supporters. The ceremony will be the most secured after President Abraham Lincoln's swearing in. Officials have announced deployment of around 25,000 troops to secure the event. FBI, Homeland Security and other security departments have also stepped up their presence. President Trump has already approved an emergency declaration for Washington to last through January 24. Bridges leading into the city, along with all vehicular traffic, will remain suspended from today. The inauguration festivities will be broadly downsized as the country still struggles to contain the deadly pandemic. In Spain, Coast Guards have rescued 34 migrants in the Atlantic Ocean. The migrants, including 20 women and 3 children, were transported to Arguineguin port on the island of Gran Canaria. The Red Cross said 1 child died during the journey in the Atlantic. The number of undocumented migrations to Spain's Canary Islands in 2020 rose over 8 times than in 2019. Spanish Interior Ministry said over 21,400 migrants arrived in Gran Canaria by sea in 2020. Coronavirus pandemic forced many in North and Sub-Saharan Africa to embark on dangerous journeys to Europe. In Chile, hundreds of anti-government protesters hit the streets of the capital Santiago, calling for an end to inequality. Police in riot gear used water cannons and tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. The demonstrations called for reforms to existing pension, healthcare and education systems. The South American country has seen protests against stark inequality for over a year now. Chileans voted in favor of a new charter to replace the country's Pinochet-era constitution in late last October. Raging wildfires have forced thousands of people to evacuate their homes in Chile's Valparaiso region. According to authorities, the wildfires were started deliberately. Officials said at least 10 properties were engulfed by fires sweeping through the forest area near Colpo city, but no deaths or injuries were reported. The fires blazed through 400 hectares of forest. Authorities ordered evacuation of around 25,000 residents, deploying hundreds of firefighters. The Interior Minister, Rodrigo Delgado, urged the residents to evacuate.
I know that for people, their property is of extreme importance. I know that for people, it is very difficult to abandon your belongings and your property. But the call from the government is that the lives of people come first.
The death toll from earthquake in Indonesia's Sulawesi Island has risen to 45 as a powerful 5 magnitude aftershock also hit the region. The local disaster mitigation agency said over 820 people have been injured and about 15,000 been evacuated. It said the search for victims who may still be trapped under rubble is ongoing. The agency has warned of another quake that can reach the magnitude of 7, urging the residents to keep out of the waters. The U.S. Geological Survey said the quake's epicenter was in West Sulawesi province at a depth of 18 kilometers. Yesterday's tremor leveled a hospital and severely damaged other buildings. WhatsApp has delayed the implementation of its new privacy policy by 3 months. This comes after millions of its users started moving to rival platforms like Telegram and Signal. The Facebook-owned company said no one will have their account suspended or deleted on February 8. The company said it will do more to clear up the misinformation around how privacy and security works on WhatsApp. It has clarified that the update does not affect personal data sharing with Facebook and only addresses business chats. The delayed policy change was originally scheduled to come into effect on February 8. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Hungary, a woman colloquially known as Teddy Bear Mama has a collection of thousands of teddy bears. As Hungary tightens COVID-19 restrictions, the teddy bears wait in the warehouse to bring joy to children in local nurseries. More in this report.
In a small village in eastern Hungary, more than 20,000 teddy bears are hibernating in a warehouse as they wait for the pandemic regulations to end.
I give away teddy bears to nurseries, preschools, and poor families. I also organize exhibitions for children institutions, a kind of therapeutic teddy bear corner with about 30 to 50 bears, with which children can play. These are very sweet little exhibits, but unfortunately, because of the virus situation now, I cannot arrange these exhibitions anymore.
Valeria Schmidt, a 62-year-old woman, looks after her precious collection of bears amid the resurgence of coronavirus. Schmidt is the mother of 4 children and has been collecting teddy bears for the past 40 years. Her passion for the bears stems from her childhood traumas when she suffered heavily at the hands of her parents' divorce, her mother's addiction, and poverty. After a troubled childhood, the Hungarian collector hugs and strokes her teddies many times a day. She believes that teddy bears have cured her soul.
Now these teddy bears have made up for all the hunger, all the lack of love, lack of toys and everything. Especially when I see children coming to see my exhibition and I see the joy and happiness in their eyes, that gives me a compensation for everything. So the wounds of my childhood have healed.
Valeria Schmidt entered the Guinness Book of World Records in 2019 for the world's largest collection of teddy bears.
2 10-year-old Pakistani twin sisters have become the youngest Microsoft Power Platform certified professionals. Zara Khan and Zenubia Khan are the youngest twin pair in the world to pass the certification. The certification is for individuals who want business solutions for the organizations using the Microsoft Power Platform. The twins passed the certification after 6 months of preparation during the COVID-19 pandemic. They said they hope their story inspires more children to take up an interest in information technology. Earlier, Sania Saidan became the youngest Microsoft certified professional at the age of 5 years in 2014. India's trade deficit in goods widened to over $15 billion in December as imports rose to over $42 billion. According to the government data, the deficit resulted from a surge in gold imports, while merchandise exports were marginally up. The merchandise trade deficit was over $12 billion in December last year. Meanwhile, the merchandise exports rose 0.14% in December from a year earlier to over $27 billion. Iraq has reaffirmed its commitment to the decision of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries to reduce output. In a statement, Iraq's oil minister said Baghdad will not negotiate with OPEC Plus members for its oil production share. At the height of the last year's coronavirus outbreak, OPEC Plus decided to cut output by a record 9.7 million barrels per day. Meanwhile, more recently, Saudi Arabia has announced to unilaterally cut 1 million barrels a day of crude production. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the further updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.